episode. I will be taking you through chapter 8. I am Kagali Kennedy. In this chapter 8 of Fathers of the Nation by Paul B. Vita, we shall be looking at the episodes broken down into one, Pastor Chiamaka driving recklessly towards the university, taking his brother Obina. Then two, we shall be looking at his transformation, which he terms it as a miracle, and how he became a preacher. And then, which is the parable of dollars in paper bag, which he preaches in his church of the CIA. And then lastly, we shall be looking at his arrest after the combative sermon goes against. Very fast, I want us to talk about Pastor Chineke Chiamaka. Pastor Chineke Chiamaka is from Nigeria, Lagos. He is about 50 years old. He is actually against the government that he is doing against his subjects. This chapter, very fast to analysis, this chapter is presented to us in a form of a flashback. Actually, the chapter introduces to us a reckless driver. He is driving, his hand sticking out of the window and blaring out the latest music. Most of the people in Nigeria hated Pastor Chiamaka except his brother Obina, who thrilled alongside the speed of his Mercedes Benz. One evening, as he was driving towards the university, his brother used to attend the evening lessons at Lagos University. So he drove off very speed and was also hooting at the pedestrians who were coming on the way. Remember, it's on a Friday and he was heading to the town. This is a day that people, actually the Christians, congregate at the Holy Camp church, and all of them go to worship. Therefore, Pastor Chiamaka has to drop off his brother Obina before heading to his office at the Earth Movers Limited. Unfortunately, by taking the route that he chose that particular day, he finds himself in trouble. Actually, he is unable to penetrate. Therefore, what does he do? Pastor Chiamaka decides to change the route and now goes against the flowing current of the vehicle. He actually now begins hooting at the vehicles and assumes that those vehicles which are coming are also having drivers inside. So he also believes that those people or those drivers who are coming, they are also seeing him, or they are able to get the view of him coming onwards. In this, he doesn't knock anybody or hit a pedestrian. He terms it also a miracle. But at one time, as he has just dropped his brother when he's rushing back, he knocks a fire engine, and there his vehicle goes flying off the road and spans in the air several times before landing on the road again. In this section, we find that Pastor Chiamaka escaped without a serious injury. The fire engine was nowhere. Not a single motorist in Nigeria stood or stopped to check on the accident. Actually, they had considered that that was a norm in Nigeria, that they did not want to be part of the accident or become one of the person who would be in the court or a witness to give evidence against the accident. Therefore, Pastor Chiamaka considered this as a preacher. He acquired the skills gradually just by maximizing on his teachings, where he was teaching in the indoors, in the shopping malls, everywhere, in the streets, everywhere. He was everywhere. So he adapted the skill of his rambling voice and also making sure that he has that firm voice which could make his congregation accept that he is indeed a great preacher. One Sunday, Pastor Chiamaka gave a powerful preaching. It captioned, "God is watching you." He used the parable of a $10 million while alone in a parking lot. The sermon was excellent and witty and persuasive. It actually captioned on the corruption in Nigeria, that he was asking his congregation, suppose you were to pick a $10 million, What are you supposed to do with it? You give to the police, you remain with it, or you share among yourselves. So all of this was all along to talk about the integrity of people in Nigeria. Therefore, people were so happy and they were excited about the sermon. But what happened about the following Sunday? The following Sunday, this pastor actually preached against the government. He went, the congregation followed very keenly, but they were afraid sometimes to respond to because they knew what would follow. And indeed, the following Monday, it happened. The police got him and jailed him. They picked him and took him to the custody. Pastor Chiamaka felt the hostile environment of our prisons. Actually, there, he had to share a rat-infested cell with the smelly inmates. At the beginning of the 3rd week, he was so lucky, they set him free. The police banned him also from preaching against the government and also even preaching just anywhere. 2 years later, a deep voice called him. Listen, good news about Africa. Good news for change. Good news about Africa is hard to find or to hear. So listen carefully. Agda was calling. Agda had just come up with a fresh approach to Africa's development, Path Alpha. Therefore, Pastor Chineke Chiamaka did not listen or hear anymore. He signed the documents and he joined Path Alpha. In that order, I would wish us now to look at the thematic concerns which are coming out from this particular episode. And these are the first thematic concern we shall be looking at: change or transformation. Pastor Chiamaka Chineke is being involved in an accident to a very powerful machine. He strikes it and the vehicle rolls severally, but he doesn't die. Through that particular accident, he now turns against and becomes a new leaf and becomes a pastor. Actually, he is the one who has been picked to be part of the 4 Path Alpha. This is also change that is blowing across Africa, that there is a wind of change that is blowing across the African nations. This is through the Way Omega summit which will be taking place. But alongside that, the 4 Path Alpha are the ones, including Pastor Chineke Chiamaka, will be part of the members who will be surprisingly making their way into that particular summit. And their agenda is to make sure they sneak in Path Alpha so that it can bring about the change leadership and the dictatorship of African presidents. This is a challenge, but he has no option but to face it. The next item to check out is pain and suffering. There is pain and suffering as a theme in this particular episode. Pastor Chiamaka, after his controversial combative sermon, he is arrested. He feels that he needs to speak out about the ills that the government is looking or overlooking about the people. The lukewarm states of the government on its people, and about the responses to the riots in some parts of the country. His congregation is very keen about this, and they do not want to respond to, and because they are afraid of the government's harm. Therefore, what happens? Actually, the following morning, Pastor Chiamaka is picked up by the police, and we are also described in the book on how he ends up in a smelly cell that's filled up with rats together with inmates. Actually, they end up banning him from conducting any preaching business. This is so bad, and it completely demoralizes Pastor Chiamaka. However, there is also another theme that comes out alongside that. That's the theme of religious and spiritual. Religious and spiritual. This in this part, Pastor Chiamaka, inside the church of inside his church of Africa in Lagos, he has special skill in preaching, and he preaches everywhere. Actually, he has a strict privacy of, he preaches everywhere, indoors in the strict privacy of the house and outdoors in the glare of the light, at the shopping malls or open malls and markets. That's on page 109. He preaches the sermon that starts with, God is watching you. This happened immediately after he survived an accident, and then he terms it as a miracle. He discovers the meaning of the miracle after he never died in that particular accident. And then I want us now to move to the part of language and style. Language and style. And here purely we shall be looking at biblical allusion and vivid description, and then finally humor. So on biblical allusion, when we talk about biblical allusion in this particular book, we are facing at Pastor Chiamaka's bullying of the motorists into submission. He is described in the following way, and quote, approaching cars were either stopping or swerving out of his way, like water pausing or parting to let Moses on the wheel cross the Red Sea. That's on page 107. Actually, there is that direct reference of the biblical text into this particular book, The Fathers of the Nation. Here, Pastor Chiamaka uses the reference of Moses in the Bible while he was taking the children of Israel out of bondage, and in reference to his situation of salvaging himself out of the jam in the town. Look at this. They talk about God's highway. The God's highway at one point had turned out, is supposed to be the way that Chiamaka is supposed to use it softly. But now, look at it. He goes against even the rules of trafficking or the roads. Then second, we have vivid description. The author recounts circumstances where vivid description has been employed. The journey to Lagos is narrated with explanations on how Pastor Chiamaka crossed over to different lanes going to Lagos in the opposite direction. But he kept on going in his initial direction for the course after the Holy Camp. Beyond the crawling mass of the worshippers, he never cared about the pedestrians who would jump away, shouting and cursing on him. He only continued doing that. The description of the two roads gives us a clear picture of how on Friday actually Christians would come out and amass themselves in the streets and make sure they are worshipping their God. Lastly, we have humor. Humor is depicted through Pastor Chiamaka's all along the preachings. When he comes up with the sermons of the parable, he actually brings about some humor. There is a bit of humor that comes about on sarcasm about the police and also the integrity of an individual. He proceeds on to glare his humor to the congregation, where he talks about the church generally, about how they will behave with the $10 million. Most of the congregation says they will have taken the money, and there they end up laughing. So they also laugh at the point when the police, Pastor Chiamaka asked the question about the police being handed over the 10 million. Then finally, I want us to look at character and characterization. Character and characterization. First, we can look at Pastor Chiamaka as bold. He is bold. He actually faces off the government and tells them off that he is not in support of them neglecting the people who are rioting against the oppression. He is also bold to go to the church, a holy place, and bring out the theme of politics or political. He actually politicizes that particular part. Then you can talk about him bringing out that part of boldness. Then second, you can talk about Pastor Chiamaka being charismatic. He's so charismatic in his